So, with Nicholas Latifi joining the F1 grid in 2020, conversation around pay drivers has been heightened. Now, Lance has pretty much single-handedly held this unfortunate title because he's got a lot of stick for being a pay driver, for having all this financial support, getting him to where he is, and whether he deserves his place in Formula One. But have we been blissfully ignorant? Have we been ignoring everyone's favourite son, the meme lord that is Lando Norris? Because he's got a rich dad that has helped support his junior Formula career, getting him to the position where he is today. So is Lando a paid driver? Well, today I want to talk about exactly what it means to be a paid driver, whether or not that's a good or bad thing, and ultimately who fits into that category. Does Lando? And of course, please don't forget to drop a like on this video if you're enjoying it, subscribe if you're new and you want to see more, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Once every 3 days I'm going for at the minute in terms of consistency in content. We'll see. So first we've got to start by defining what exactly is a pay driver. Well, it's a phenomenon that exists very much in the smaller teams in Formula One. The bigger teams have big organisations that they can supplement their racing with. Your Renaults, your Mercedes, your McLarens, the Red Bulls, all these big teams. They don't need the money as much as the smaller teams do, where their sole input and their sole business is in motor racing. So modern pay drivers are typically drivers who are affiliated with certain sponsors who will follow them around the grid. They will sponsor and pay for putting them in a seat, essentially. So with Nicholas Latifi, for example, his dad, Michael Latifi, owns Safina Foods, which has paid, essentially bankrolled his way into that Williams seat alongside George Russell. And you could say the same about Robert Kubica on his return with Orlen, who were with him at Williams and now followed him to Alfa Romeo. Now, if we jump back to arguably the most famous of all the pay drivers to actually make it, is the late, great Niki Lauda, who initially, in order to get into a F2 seat with March at first, had to take out quite a substantial personal risk, his life insurance policy, and took out a 30 grand loan to get that F2 seat, plonked it on their desk, was like, cop that, give me that seat. Fortunately, his talent, preceded him. He managed to get into the F1 seat, but then he had to do the same. He took out another loan, and that got him the BRM seat in Formula One a few years later. Because ultimately, it's a balance, right? So you've got one driver who's incredibly talented, but doesn't have big financial backing. And you've got another driver who's 90% as good, right? But can bring 10 million that can help keep the factory lights on. If you're a big team like Mercedes, you don't need to worry about that. You can go for the more talented driver. But if you're a smaller team and you've got to worry more about paying your staff and all the expenses that come with motor racing, you can see why they do it. But of course, all that money doesn't necessarily lead to success. So Rubens Barrichello was quoted literally a couple of days ago talking about this in regards to Williams, who have taken on paid drivers pretty consistently for at least the last 10 years. And he's actually credited that to their downfall because they're focused so much on getting these paid drivers in, getting money in through the door, which is great, but you don't have that experience and that quality level of driver to develop the car and really push it forward. And from his point of view, they're suffering for it. And I think he raises a very good point, to be fair. I like to cite football quite a bit on this channel, and I think there's a lot of parallels between the two sports. You look at Junichi Inamoto to Arsenal, Park Ji-sung to Man United, Takumi Minamino to Liverpool more recently. These are all players that the clubs would never admit are hired because of shirt sales. But ultimately, you can't ignore, it's unquestionable, the link to their commercial profitability from shirt sales in their respective countries that come from signing those players. None of these players are useless, of course. Inamoto was an absolute boss at Fulham. Park Ji-sung became a massive fan favourite at Man United, and rightly so, because he was quality. And Minamino, at Leipzig, he was smashing it. So these players aren't hapless by any stretch of the imagination, but again, you can't ignore their commercial appeal. For me, it's really difficult to make a distinction. You go back to 2014, and when K-Mag replaced Sergio Perez at McLaren, this at the time was hailed as a massive win against paying drivers because, of course, Sergio brings in a lot of money. He's got Telmex, Telcel, and Claro sponsors. They brought in $26 million per year in those 2011 and 2012 seasons. That's a lot of money. But then you look at Sergio now, and you don't even think of him as this pay driver who doesn't deserve his seat and has bought his way in, because he's so talented and clearly 100% there now, based on his ability. But of course, the extra little bit of money that Racing Point gets, I'm sure they don't mind. Back in 91, Mercedes paid Jordan $150,000 for a little unknown junior in their ranks called Michael Schumacher to race at the 91 Belgian Grand Prix. 150k for one race. Mad. But of course, Michael got the opportunity, and as we all know, he did quite well. He did all right, didn't he? And again, we go back to Lance. If you ask me, genuinely right now, based on his ability and talent and the way he overtakes and the way he performs in races, I think he deserves that seat, like based on his talent, purely on merit. But I'm not arguing that he massively got a leg up from his dad, from all the money that he could bring to a team in order to get that opportunity at Williams at such a young age, because that wouldn't have happened to any other driver. But anyway, let's go back to Lando. Okay, so we all know that motorsport has pretty much the highest barrier to entry of any sport, really. It costs thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to put your kid through karting at 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever it is. And vast majority of normal families have nowhere near that level of finance to invest in what is essentially a kid's hobby at the start. Now again, Lando's dad, Lando Norris, is minted for sure. He's valued at around about £250 million, which is not bad. He retired at 36. And yes, he's not anywhere near Lawrence, who's at 2.6 billion, or Michael Latifi, who's at 2 billion, but 250 mil. I mean, he's not doing bad, is he? He's doing all right. But again, there's a difference between having parents who can support you to go karting, because ultimately every single racing driver who gets to a certain level has to have that support when they're younger, and being a paid driver where you're given a seat versus other more talented individuals based upon the money that you bring to the table. Adam's money helped fund Lando's early career in the same way that Keke Rosberg's helped fund Nico's, in the same way that Jos Verstappen's helped fund Max's, in the same way that Anthony Hamilton, even though he wasn't a multimillionaire but worked 3 jobs or whatever it was to support Lewis. I can't find anywhere any indication that Adam paid for Lando to be in that McLaren team. And to be fair, I can see why, because Lando's results completely did the talking. So as I mentioned in my F1 Drivers 7 years ago video, Lando won the 2013 CIK FIA KF Junior Championship, but he also won the KF Senior in 2014, the MSA Formula in 15, Toyota Racing Series in 16, Formula Renault 2.0 Euro Cup in 16, and European F3 in 2017. And of course, he finished second behind Georgie Boy in F2. So that's a very, very good CV. And of course, it was in 2017, during that very successful F3 season, that he was snapped up by McLaren. Also, I want to give another quick shout out for Lance Stroll in that season before, 2016 F3 season. He absolutely slapped that grid up, mate. 187 points he won that championship by. He beat the likes of Maxi Gunter, George Russell, Nick Cassidy, Callum Ilott, and Guan Yu Zhu, and a bunch of others. And bear in mind, F3 is a spec series. Lance had them all on toast. But yeah, ultimately, to call Lando a pay driver and diminish his achievements is just not. It's just factually incorrect. So look, let's round up, okay? So yes, it's frustrating that the most talented drivers don't always get the opportunities that we all think they deserve. But we've got to look at the fundamentals of F1 as a sport. Sponsors are ultimately the lifeblood of F1. Without them, imagine how much it would cost to put F1 on all of our TVs. Imagine how much the tickets would be for race days. Without all that money, the sport wouldn't exist. The money that pay drivers bring in help keep the smaller teams afloat, help keep the lights on, help keep all them staff members in a job, and help add to the spectacle that is Formula One. And again, it's important to remember that pretty much every driver now has sponsors that follow them from team to team. You can't tell me that if Lewis ever does do this, move to Ferrari that everyone seems to want, that sponsors won't move with him, right? I harbour absolutely no contempt towards Nicholas or Lance for being in their position as pay drivers, because ultimately, again, it's that money that has helped support the sport that we all love. But also, if I was in their shoes, mate, if my dad was minted and he was paying for me, of course I would. Don't tell me you wouldn't. Of course you would. Lando is not a pay driver. But at the same time, pay drivers don't deserve the flack that they get. If we immediately threw all pay drivers under the bus, then your likes of Lauda, your likes of Schumacher, would never have got the opportunities necessarily to shine in the way they did. Life deals us all different hands, right? And I ain't going to jump on someone based on the way that their dice was rolled in life. You know what I mean? This was a fun one to make, man. I feel quite passionately about this subject. A, because I actually rate Lance Stroll and I think he gets a lot of undeserved slack online anyway. But also because I think a lot of us forget, like, the nature of F1. It's, if you're going to be the pinnacle of racing technology, it's going to cost a lot of money, and that's going to mean a lot of sponsors and a lot of reliance on getting money too, especially if we want small teams to fight when this is like the pinnacle of technology and development and all that stuff, because it's money. Like, money makes the world go around, but no sport is more reliant on vast sums of wealth. There's a reason it's the sport for the rich and famous, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the reality of what it is. And unless big changes come, which, you know, you want certain changes like budget cuts and stuff like that, but if you still want it to be the pinnacle, then it's got to retain a lot of that wealth, you know what I mean? But anyway, there it is. Hope you enjoyed. Please drop a like if you have. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more. My name's been Tommo. This is the Tommo F1 YouTube channel. Thanks again, as ever, for watching. Have a good one. Ta-da.